Teach me?
First learn stand, then learn fly.
Yeah.
Nature ruled on you, son, not the mine.
I know what you're trying to do.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo. But I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life.
Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Gerald Auger. We'll discuss his origin story, how he ventured into cybersecurity, his unique experience working at the South Pole, and the creation of Simply Cyber. Jerry has generously offered our listeners a discount code to his GRC Analyst Masterclass. Check out our show notes for the link to his class and use discount code CYBER10.
And also, we're excited to share that we started a newsletter where you can get additional cybersecurity mentorship and career advice sent to your inbox. Check out the show notes for the link to sign up today.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Cybersecurity Mentors podcast. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Gerald Auger on his cybersecurity journey. Dr. Auger is a 20-plus year cybersecurity professional, academic, and author. He has been the cybersecurity architect at MUSC, a multi-billion-dollar academic medical center. He has built cybersecurity programs from the ground up as an adjunct faculty member at the Citadel Military College Cyber Science Department and fulfills the role of chief content creator on the successful YouTube channel Simply Cyber. Dr. Auger is passionate about cybersecurity and has educated tens of thousands of students on the discipline. He holds a PhD in cyber operations and 2 masters in computer science and information assurance. Welcome, Dr. Gerald Auger. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks, John. Super excited to be here and have a great conversation.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So we're going to go back to the origin story, to the beginning. I don't know how people know the story. I don't know the story, even though I've known you for a while. Tell us where'd you grow up?
Oh, wow, that really origin.
Yeah,
wow,
we're going back.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's funny because no one ever asked that, but my mom's side of the family was from the South. My dad's side was from New England. So I did spend the very early part of my life in the South, and I still have family there. So I would go there for summers and long breaks and stuff like that. So definitely have that Southern, politeness and instilled in me as a youngster. But I grew up essentially in New England, in Massachusetts, going through Massachusetts school systems, which are, really good school systems, or, at least I thought they were very good. Leaned into education, always enjoyed challenging myself, kind of more AP classes and honors level stuff like that. And then went on to University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is kind of the flagship school out there at UMass. Fun story, John and Steve. Again, never really tell this story. I was not really challenged, even though I was taking all these honors classes in high school and stuff and did sports and whatnot. Wasn't really challenged, so I was kind of cruising. And I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have guidance. My family wasn't really the kind that went on to college and didn't know what the deal was on how to select a school and what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like, I like computers. I'll do computer science. And people were like, oh, you got to apply to all these schools. So basically, my longtime girlfriend, applied to a school. And I was like, okay, it wasn't really a computer science school. I was like, all right, I'll apply there. And then I was like, oh, I got a scholarship or whatever to go to a school in Boston. And it's $30,000 a year. And they gave me a $2,000 scholarship. I'm like, oh, I've got a scholarship, right? Because I'm 18 and don't know anything about anything. And $2,000 seems like a lot of money. And,
Right.
I'll just take a huge loan out and never worry about paying it. So I get it accepted to both of those schools. And the relationship, explodes and completely collapses on itself. So I'm not going to that school anymore, thank goodness. And then the school in Boston, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, as we get closer, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have $30,000 a year, or $120,000. What am I doing? And I remember it was April or May. It was deep. We had already gone way on. And my cousin actually went to UMass Amherst. He was a senior at the time, and he worked at the admissions office. And I like frantically applied and just like emailed it to him. I'm like, can you like help? And so he got it, side channeled into the admissions office. I earned the right to be there. It wasn't like I got gifted a admission, but I certainly didn't go through the right process, and matriculated in the fall and went off and got a computer science degree from UMass Amherst. But just even talking out loud, I know it's family, but like it just goes to show you the value and power of a network. I say it all the
Right.
time, and I never even realized like if I had sent that application out to UMass Amherst in May, they'd be like, "You fool!"
Mhm.
Like So that's me. Got a computer science degree and then entered the big wide world and started adulting.
So I'm curious, like, I know for me, like, what was like your first computer? What was the thing that kind of got you into
Oh wow.
computers?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So we had an Apple IIe, and for you youngs back there, this was the jam. It's the one you'd have in your school, right? We had an Apple IIe, like basically the software stack for Mac, or not even Macs, but the software stack for Apple computers back in the 80s was trash, right? So like Windows had, applications and Mac didn't. So I think we had Print Shop and then like Ultima Online 3, or not Ultima Online, Ultima 3. And I would play those, but it was really limited on what you could do on that. So I found an attraction to the computers. I liked the cleanness of them, right? You could do a bunch of stuff and there was no mess on your desk. But the one that like really launched me into the next phase of my life was a Hewlett Packard, right? Again, in the 80s or early 90s, you either had a Hewlett Packard or you had a Gateway, right? So I had a Hewlett Packard 486 SX 33 megahertz with the turbo button, John. Steve, you guys remember the turbo button? Like, it's so stupid.
yeah.
Like, why would you not have the turbo button
Next
enabled?
level.
Yeah, like it was like a physical button you push on the thing. So yeah, that once I got into that, I started getting into BBSs, which is like websites before the internet, and like dialing into people's computers, playing games, trade wars. Like that's like an old school BBS game, and just started getting into that. And then even then, like my getting into cyber, really, I got blown away at one point in my career, which launched the entire fleet of me becoming cyber. But even at an early age, I remember being like really not turned on, but like really interested on kind of like fringe type stuff. Now, I'm not going to commit crime or anything, but there was this thing called the Jolly Roger Cookbook like a million years ago. And it would teach you like how to do phone phreaking, like what blue boxing is and red boxing. And like, I found it engrossing and fascinating. I never wanted to commit any of these crimes, but I found it just unbelievable that like all this knowledge was out there and that was accessible and stuff like that. So yeah, that was absolutely my first intro into interest in cyber. That and the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick.
I was gonna ask you, were there any movies? For me, for sure, War Games was part of it. Although I had no idea what that stuff was, and was just like, this was foreign, but it was cool. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, this is cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
I can like again like a complete dope. I remember like somehow like blue screening like my Apple IIe. Like they don't blue screen like a Microsoft OS does, but like somehow I dropped into a blue screen and like I could type things, but it wasn't doing anything. It was some weird space. And I remember like typing like grade, like my name and like grades, and then calling my cousin over and being like, "Look, I hacked into the school. Like Matthew Broderick, I'm changing my grades right now." He's like, "Dude, you're so stupid." I'm like, "Nah, it's real." So
yeah, check this out. Yeah, watch me. Yeah, so you've got the computer at home. You're kind of getting. Was that a uncommon thing? Where you, for your friends, did they all have similar, like they've got an Apple or a Windows computer, or was that unusual?
Actually, that's a good question. So I had different. I've always been kind of like a social butterfly. So like I have different kind of like social circles, right? But one of them was computer club, and like all those guys had computers, and like like when you got the 14.4 modem, you were like blazing. You were like the cool kid with a leather jacket, basically in school. And then I remember like I got a 28.8 right there in my senior year, and I was, amazing. But so that group of kids did have computers, but for the most part, the kids I ran with didn't have computers. And another thing that people may not realize, again, I know you guys are going to identify with this, but like you had like a family computer. Like it wasn't like you had your own machine. Like you had like a timeshare basically of a family computer. So there was that too. But yeah, I would spend a lot of time on it, man. Get home from school, play outside, do sports and whatever. And then, basically just dial into BBSs and dink around or play video games.
Yeah, were you, kind of my first, I did some BBS stuff, and then AOL was the thing. Were you all into AOL and you've got mail and in the chat rooms in there too? Because IRC was cool. ICQ, IRC is like, oh, that's where you don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to drop in and who knows who you're going to come across. But AOL was kind of like the friendly version of that. Like
safe zone.
It wasn't really, but that's kind of was the idea behind it. Did you get into that phase too?
Yeah, I did have the AOL. I mean, I was a poor kid. Like a lot of people, when they're young, like don't have money. So like you'd be grinding through 4-hour free AOL discs, like left and right, those things. But I did have AOL. I remember spending some time on that because the Instant Messenger bot, the AIM bot, if you guys remember that, you'd have all your friends on there. That was like pre OG Discord, having the AIM bots. And like your username was like very important. Like it absolutely represented your online persona. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, John. I actually can't recall if it was like a clean like lift and shift to AOL and like abandon the BBSs. I feel like I kind of ran in parallel with them because the BBSs would give you, I mean, it wasn't necessarily like, Outlander territory or whatever, but it was just a different, more, community vibe where AOL, like they had the communities, but you were just dealing with a bunch of like randos, you know what I mean? So yeah, AOL, man. Yeah, I'm so glad they broke off the AIM bot off of the main AOL. Do you remember that? You could just have the instant messenger. Oh man, dude, this is such a good like nostalgia trip.
NT Mac was my user ID because I was going to be a Windows NT Mac daddy.
Oh, nice, dude. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that was lame, but it was cool at the time.
Oh no, you were killing it.
So you're looking to do computer science. Did you have an idea what that even meant? Like, what is computer science?
No idea at all. Like, I just knew that I had like I had a kind of an insatiable appetite for computers and for technology and stuff like that. Like, I just loved it. I loved, back then too, like another thing that people may not understand, back then you would like mod your computer all over the place. Like you'd open it up, you'd be putting RAM chips in it, you'd be upgrading the modem, like you would be in there quite a bit. So I found that fascinating. Computer science, I thought, oh, it's just going to take like my computer skills to the next level. And then interestingly, UMass Amherst has a excellent computer science program, right? It's like recognized nationally. So I'm not just like flexing or whatever, but the program, when I went through it, I literally thought the only thing you could do is become a software developer. Because right when you start freshman year, they made you, Java was like the rage. It had just come out. So like they made you take Java 1, Java 2, and that kind of like established like your beginning freshman year. And then you'd take like networking, databases, operating systems, and all of the assignments would have something to do with writing programs to, demonstrate capability with these technologies. And you'd be writing them in Java because that's what you had learned. And I was like, oh, like everything is in service of writing code. This is what I need to do. And it couldn't have been further from the truth looking back now with perspective.
Yeah. Like even the students here, they don't take networking until like junior year. Right, yeah. TCP/IP, and it's like, what? Like, how is that possible?
Blows my mind. Yeah, dude, I know. Just as a quick aside, College of Charleston, I've hired multiple interns out of College of Charleston. As of last time I checked, networking isn't even in their computer science curriculum, which blew my mind. I was like, how are you like? That's terrible.
Yeah, for sure. And I see the students here, right? They are like what you said, really focus on development, programming. That's kind of what they're thinking and what their mindset is around. Like, okay, am I going to go into software engineering, and what flavor of software engineering?
Yeah.
And then they can, maybe they come across cybersecurity. So is that while you're in college, is that when cybersecurity became more of a serious path of, okay, I think this is where I want to go?
Actually, no. So my undergrad was 98 to 02 basically. I had to stay a little bit longer because I was a donkey, but like basically 98 to 02. And I say that just so people can understand that like then cybersecurity was not a thing. Like it definitely wasn't its own major. It wasn't even a course that you took. And I mean, if I think back, really hard, like a little bit of security was even involved. Like when you're writing programs, you're not writing like make sure it's auditing. You're not writing like the authentication mechanisms. Like you're just writing code that runs. And so I didn't even know about computer security, which actually is quite interesting because the way I find out about it professionally is I got audited. So obviously I graduate, I get it. I went, not obviously, but I graduate. I go down to DC working for the Marine Corps at the Pentagon, and I'm writing a custom web application, model view controller paradigm. And it gets audited for FISMA, which is a Federal Information Security Management Act. It's basically a U.S. federal standard that federal agencies have to apply to or apply with or comply with. And I get audited, and they come back, and it was Deloitte, and they're like, "This software is terrible. Like you're violating everything." They're like, "You don't authenticate, and where you do, it's like cheesy. You're not auditing. Like this is bad, real bad. You need to fix this." And I was like, when someone tells you your baby's ugly, you're like, ugh. So yeah. I got wicked pissed. I got wicked mad, and and like dug into FISMA because basically like a stubborn 22-year-old, I'm like, these people don't know what they're talking about. They're wrong. I'm gonna find
old people.
Old people. Yeah. Hey, like take your gray hair and get out of here, you old person. So I go dig into FISMA and I'm like, oh, this is actually crazy cool. Like, look at all these different things and how complex it is. So then I get the bug, like obviously kind of like dredging up some of that silt from my youth. And I did what I think is a pretty cool hack. Again, I will be the very first person to tell you I'm not offensive security minded. I don't pretend to be. I suck at it. I'm very conformist in my thinking. But I went into Outlook at the company I worked for, which had like 45,000 employees. And the global address list, the GAL, it basically lists everybody in the company. I filtered by manager and above, United States, and cyber, right? You could like filter in like capability. And I got a list of like 200 people. So I'm like, okay, these are managers who work in cyber in the US. And I literally just dumped their phone numbers and I called them like one after another. And probably like on the seventh one was a guy named Ray Sturby. And I'm like, hey, like I work for this company, I work for the same company as you. I'm like really interested in cybersecurity. Like, can you talk to me for a few minutes? And he's like, yeah, sure. And like, we talked for like an hour and he gave me a bunch of resources and I went off and did all of them. And I did a follow-up call with him. And he, I credit him for like being a pivotal inspiration in my life. And I remember the thing that like really blew my top off was like vulnerability scanners, right? So like, I know they're so trivial now, right? Like, oh, Qualys, Rapid7, whatever. Like you just stand it up and spin it. But back then I was like, wait a minute. Like, I think to be a hacker, right, to exploit 0 days, you've got to be like this next level PhD engineer who like understands how to like, see the cracks in the wall and navigate them.
The matrix.
And the scanner,
see the matrix.
Yeah. And you could just point a scanner at a computer and it'll tell you all the things wrong and what you need to do to exploit it. Like I remember saying to him, I said like, why aren't bad guys using this? And he's like, they are. I'm like, why isn't everything getting cracked open then? He's like, because the good guys use them too. And we try to move as quickly as we can to close those holes. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is exciting. Like, tell me more. So just a quick follow-up, a fun fact. So I go to Black Hat every year and I go to a very like this isn't like this is way less cool than it sounds, but like there's like this invite only breakfast on Wednesday morning hosted by Jeremiah Grossman, and it's like 15 people. And all we do is talk about cyber insurance, which is why you're probably like, "Ooh, I want to get in on this private breakfast," and then you find out the topic, and you're like, "I'm pass. I'll just grab a burrito from a food truck." So, Ray Sturby was actually on the invite list, 3 years ago, and I was gonna meet him there, and it ended up my flight got canceled, and I was a day late to Black Hat, and I missed it. So like I've emailed him from time to time. I've called him from time to time over the years just to remind him. But anyways, yeah, kind of a full circle opportunity there. So I've still never met him in real life.
Okay, so we got to double click on this. This is great. So you got Ray. Well, let me back up a little bit. So the Marine Corps, the Pentagon.
Yeah.
How did you land that job?
Okay, so that's another funny one. Again, networking. So check this out. Like, I can't believe how impactful networking has been on my career. Sometimes I forget. So when I first graduated, we have to take a step back in order to fully appreciate this. When I first graduated UMass with my computer science degree, another like completely idiotic, dumb Jerry thing was computer science is so hot. Like 2000 to 2002, like that was the .com boom, right? Like the internet was exploding. Like Mark Cuban was making billions. Yahoo was like the hottest thing on the planet. Alta Vista was the search engine, right? And all of it is built on code. Model view controller, web applications. This is like how people are making money. Like, I mean, dude, you got
stars in your eyes. You're like, this, yeah. I'm hitting it now. I'm here. Yes.
Oh, dude, like I was like, this is so cool. Like I'm going to hit like one of those turbo patches on RC Pro-Am where you're just like, right? So I'm like, I'm going to have like my pick of the litter. Like I'm literally just going to like I'm just going to do a trust fall into a job.
I have arrived. Arrived.
Yeah. So yeah, like Jerry's entered the chat. So I trust fall and I land like face first into pavement. And I'm like, let me try that again. And I fall again into pavement. I'm like, and it was kind of a perfect storm. First of all, there is no like, downtown market of vendors who are begging for recent computer science grads. Okay. So like that didn't exist. Right. Again, I have no idea where I came up with this idea. I'm like, oh yeah. Second of all, there was a massive macro movement at that time that people may remember. You youngs won't know this, but basically outsourcing to India software was like, it was the thing. It was like how CEOs were like increasing revenue dramatically. You were getting the same software basically at a fraction of the price. So it was a major cost savings. So like the job market for US based citizens was actually reducing for software engineering. Again, I thought I could only do software engineering. So I end up having to work construction, which, if you've done it, it's not great. I end up working construction for like 4 or 5 months while I'm like constantly applying to jobs. And I ended up getting one as a software dev, got wicked exploited, which I can go into that story if you want later. But and I worked there for 1 year getting that experience. And at the Pentagon, there was a friend. So my uncle he's an old Marine. He had a friend who's an old Marine who ran basically the accounting department of the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps uses professional services in order to do things, including projects like build new technologies. And he said to his friend at a beer meetup or whatever, like, hey, like my nephew, he's like cranking on this software engineering stuff, but he's getting exploited at his current job. You know of anything? He's like, yeah, I got a whole team building software right now, and we're looking for people. Have him send me his resume, and I'll give it to the team lead. And I sent the resume. Team lead got it. They called me. I went in for what was like the most cupcake interview ever. I don't even think they asked me questions. They were just like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, hey, like I'm cool. And they're like, oh, you are cool. Like we're cool too. And we high-fived it.
Great. Come on.
Yeah. And like we went to lunch, and then they're like, there'll probably be an offer letter for you by the end of the week. I'm like, Jesus, this is awesome. So I earned the job myself, but it was a perfect storm where like they needed more developers. I was a developer. And the reason I found out about the opportunity was because of the network. So the job was never posted. They just said, like, we need more people. Do you know anyone? And that's how it came to be. And by the way, I moved to DC in order for the job. So I was open to, usually younger in your career, you're open to moving a little bit more because you have less responsibility, So yeah, that's how the
Yeah.
Marine Corps job came to be.
Okay. Networking. I love
2
it.
for 2 on networking.
That's right. So I like the whole gal, right? Looking through the address book.
Yeah.
So this is young Jerry still, maybe in your 20s, right? And you're thinking outside the box, right? Okay, how can I find somebody to talk to that is doing cyber? And this is a good lesson for people. Like, look, being motivated, being dedicated. You got to number 7, and
Yeah.
Ray picks up the phone, and you're selling. You've already maybe had a couple of hangups. I don't know what people did when you call them. They're like, "Who is this crazy person?"
Yeah, like a couple people didn't answer. One was a voicemail. A couple people were like, "I don't have time for this," So
Yeah. So Ray, what do you think it was about Ray and your conversation that he was like, "Sure, yeah, I'm willing to help."
I don't know. I mean, I think it comes down to personality. Ray got a degree from Columbia and from Carnegie Mellon, and I remember like when he told me that, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm like, I got a computer science degree from UMass Amherst. Like I'm like that. Just like square, like cut up SpongeBob meme that's like, I'm like,
Mhm.
do I need these degrees, Ray? Like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I think just being genuine and being like, not obvious,
Eager.
but yeah, like I was
Yeah.
hungry. I was hungry. And,
Yeah.
and I think like, I mentor at scale, like I see people, it's clear when someone's hungry and when someone's
Right.
just kind of like going through the motions because they've been told to go through the motions. But he gave me some homework basically, and I went and did the homework.
Nice.
And that's it, man. It was hunger. I
Yeah.
knew what I wanted, and I was going to go get it.
That's the thing we talked about in a mentorship episode, how to find a mentor. So if they give you something to do, you go do it and you show like, look, I did the thing and thank you for that advice. And here's how I thank you. I actually did it. Let me show you what I did. And
Yeah.
then you keep building that relationship. So that's great. So maybe fast forward a little bit and how'd you get your first job doing cybersecurity?
Oh, all right. So interestingly, again, I worked for a professional services company, which I totally recommend people check out earlier in their career because a professional service company is like contractors. They typically contract with like governments, and the business model is they pay you, and this is for simple math, they pay you $20 an hour and they charge the government $40 an hour. So if you're not doing 1 hour of work, they're making $0 an hour. So they're hyper interested in getting you on work right away. And by the way, if you're more senior, they pay you $30 an hour and make 40 from the government. So their margins are lower. So they're even more perversely incentivized to hire younger, less experienced people because they can pay them less. So having said all that, I was in DC. I wanted to move back to Massachusetts. I've got this bug for cyber, but I want to move back to Massachusetts because my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and I were having a long distance relationship, and those are tough and kind of tough. So I wanted to get back up to Massachusetts because I was invested in my wife. I knew I was going to marry her, which is a whole other story of confidence. But so right at that time, Enron. If you guys, again, you youngs, go ask ChatGPT about Enron. But basically, Enron had committed this like gross, like financial crime, essentially, bamboozling investors and just doing all sorts of bad stuff. So the SEC, in part with Sarbanes and Oxley, these two senators, basically invented this framework called Sarbanes-Oxley or SOX compliance. And it helped manage the risk of businesses abusing their access to financials and stuff like that. And part of that included an IT audit piece of it. And, basically the company I worked at, this big professional services company, got in on the game because that's good money doing audit work. So I moved up to Massachusetts and started doing Sarbanes-Oxley IT auditing function, while at the same time starting to manage like IT like basically there was like the small business, even in these large companies, there's like little small internal businesses. And this business had like, 15 people and 3 servers. And so I was like the nerd. So they're like, hey, nerd, can you like do this IT administration too? And I said, sure. So I was like kind of fortunate. I was getting some IT Windows admin experience as well as doing SOX auditing, which by the way, no idea about how to audit, IT audit, SOX, the legislation itself. So that was a lot of like printing out as much crap as I could get on it and ingesting it. Because personally, I have the philosophy that like, I don't ever want to be the problem. I don't ever want in a project or a team or anything. I don't want me to be the one holding anything up because I have like anxiety about that. So for me, I needed to get spun up as quickly as possible on Sarbanes-Oxley. So yeah, that's me doing audit work. GRC right out the gate.
Yeah, it's funny because my first I had a kind of an incident that got me interested in cybersecurity, but really didn't start having to do it in the job until Sarbanes-Oxley. So we were being audited, and we were being audited by internal audit twice a year and then external audit twice a year. So 4 times a year at least.
Brutal.
That we were having to go through, and it was all new. Like, hey, here's these controls. Are you doing these? Like, well, no, we didn't even know what these were, right? But that did help me get like, okay, I'm actually getting some experience because now I have to do this because of Sarbanes-Oxley. So around that same time frame as 2004, 2005 time frame is when I was getting my feet wet with some security experience, like legit experience, which was cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I had no idea that you got I guess you were on the operations side, not the audit side.
Yeah.
But hey, SOX launched 1,000 boats. Like, way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're doing Sarbanes-Oxley and you're working this job. How did you pivot? I want to pivot to what kind of interested me in you, and I can't remember exactly how we connected. I know we connected, and one of the things was about doing cybersecurity in Antarctica at the South Pole. So I want to get to this story. So how did this happen? I just remember reaching out to you, or you reached out to me, or somehow we connected, and I was like, dude, you did cybersecurity in the South Pole. What? And you sent me like this. I still have it in my Google Photos, this whole folder of all the photos of you at the South Pole. And tell us about that. How did that?
Yeah, so
how'd that work
don't
out?
sleep on GRC. It can send you to cool places. So yeah, I got in, so now I'm in InfoSec. I did some more stuff up at in Massachusetts. Again, just to point out how hungry you are. When that company I was doing the auditing for went bankrupt, like, great job, CEO. So like when it went bankrupt, I literally was walking my dog and walked by a small business that said TBG Security, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And I like went up and knocked on the door. It was like a 2-guy business. I knocked on the door and they're like, can I help you and your dog? And I'm like, hi, like I love security. Like, will you give me some time? And they like sat and talked to me for a few hours. And then they ended up hiring me as like a consultant. And, so just again, to pivot on to the hunt, but my wife graduates. We live in Massachusetts and we don't like snow. So first chance we get, we move south, and I get a job working for Booz Allen Hamilton, another, professional services consulting firm, living that consultant life. And within that office, they actually had a National Science Foundation contract. So the National Science Foundation United States Antarctic program, which I think is super cool, is out of Denver. Like, that's like kind of the home base where the operations are. But they need to be audited for FISMA. FISMA auditing all federal agencies, as I mentioned earlier in the show, including, all of the facilities and research stations that support the National Science Foundation's Antarctic program. So I do want to point out, I wasn't doing that work at first. At first, I was working on a VA project, which was fine, but I wanted to be on that Antarctic program. So I made friends with all the people on that Antarctic program. I made friends with the manager over that contract. I expressed to her that I wanted to work on it. And as soon as I saw someone quit who was on that job, I immediately went to her office and knocked on her door and I said, I can do this, which ended up really causing a lot of problems with my current project because they were really mad at me but whatever. You know what? I was hungry. I did it. I wanted it, and I did it. So I get on the Antarctic project, and basically with FISMA auditing, it's a 3-year cycle, but you want to audit every year because there's so many controls that you basically break them up into thirds. Some controls you want to check every year. I won't get into the technical nuances of it. Yes, I said GRC and technical in the same sentence, right? It's a thing. So we go out to Denver once a year, and then every 3 years, we have to go to Antarctica. Well, there's 2 places in Antarctica you have to go. One is Palmer Station, which you go through Chile and, the South American Passage. You go through the Drake Passage, which is the most turbulent water in the world. You take a boat, Palmer Station, Google it. It's the coolest place ever. It's like a little hippie commune. I love it. The other one is McMurdo Station, which is the main base that like anyone going to Antarctica, whether you're with the US or not, you typically pass through McMurdo as kind of like a base. You actually take a flight from New Zealand into Antarctica, and you land on ice, like over water. Like that's the runway. And it's a C-7 jet. I mean, it's this massive jet that you don't think should be landing on ice that's only 8 feet thick, but that's what we're doing here. Yeah. And by the way, fun fact, like there's a plane crash there as well. And like, because it's Antarctica, they just didn't clean it up. So like as you're landing, there's just like this plane that's broken, that's kind of like half buried. You're like, what the hell's going on?
Just ignore the plane. Don't look at the right.
Yeah,
right
please
window,
look to your left, everyone. So so anyways, had to go, we audited McMurdo, and then only a select group of people can get to go to the South Pole. You have to be like pre-screened and authorized. And you take a C-130 to the pole. And I landed. I was there 36 hours, did my work, got to enjoy the pole, got all those crazy photos that you saw. A couple fun facts about the South Pole. One, if you didn't know, it's actually at like a really high elevation. Like it's completely flat, but like you're on top of essentially like a massive mesa. And I don't remember the exact height, maybe like 15,000 feet or something. But as soon as you get off the plane, because McMurdo Station is at sea level, like again, like the runway is 8 feet ice on sea. When you fly in and land at McMurdo at South Pole Station, when you get out of the plane, you're instantly like having a tough time breathing because you haven't acclimated to the height.
You're high. Gotcha.
Yeah. Like I remember, like as soon as you land, they fed us lunch, and I had like a hot dog, and like I literally got winded eating the hot dog. Like I like ate half the hot dog. I was like, oh boy, I gotta take a break from this hot dog, y'all. So it was cool. It was crazy. Also, fun fact again. Just information security. I'm so blessed that it's taken me so many cool places. But like flying from McMurdo to South Pole, Antarctica is actually quite mountainous. And the plane, it would actually fly low and like kind of like fly around the mountain ranges. It like they probably didn't need to do that, but it was super, super cool. And it gives me pause to think like, how on earth did like Scott and Amundsen back in the day traverse this on foot? Because it's insane to do it in a plane. But anyways, so yeah, I got there, did a bunch of GRC auditing, took a bunch of pictures, and got out of there. Very cool. I went to Antarctica 3 times. I actually, if I had my office done up better, I actually got awarded an Antarctic Service Medal. It's like the only non-military ribbon award you can earn. I've got it all framed in a shadow box and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's. I remember seeing the pictures, and I think we were talking, and you were talking me through it, and I'm like, what? This is so cool. Like how, those are the kind of things that, you just don't know. Like everybody needs security. Like maybe you can be that person.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's, if a research station gets cracked, you know what I mean? Or hacked into or whatever, it could be bad, especially that place because, it's called wintering over, but like basically you got to remember the sun doesn't come up and come down like normal rotation. Like it's like 6 months of sunlight, 6 months of dark. In the dark, it's so cold that you can't fly a plane there because the jet fuel will freeze in the plane. So yeah, there's a lot of like logistics that go on. So like you have to winter over there. So like if you shut down the energy or if you shut down critical systems, you could kill people. So yeah, it's a whole thing. Although it always cracks me up when I see these like conspiracy theories about like what's really going on at the South Pole. I'm like, oh my God.
You've been there.
Yeah.
So, all right, coming up to where you and I connected, you were at MUSC.
Mhm.
Like I said, I don't remember exactly how, but we started scheming. Hey, we need to get Clemson and MUSC and USC together, and you definitely were a pivotal person to help us organize this. And you and
Yeah.
I honestly, you and I were the ones that kind of organized it. And then the CISOs came in and they're like, yeah, we did this thing, we got
Let's take a
everybody together.
photo. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like you guys did okay, we did all the work, but it was fine.
Yeah.
But that was cool because we came down to MUSC and hung out with you guys, and we got to meet in person and got to collaborate and really tried to stay in touch ever since then, really,
Yeah.
you and I. But just from you and the next steps in your journey, you're at MUSC, you're doing cool things. Talk us through and I'm gonna let Steven kind of take over here, getting to the point where you are, how did Simply Cyber become an idea in your mind
Uh-huh.
and to maybe, hey, I'm gonna do this thing full time for real.
Yeah. So it's actually two things that happened that facilitated Simply Cyber. So this is like the Simply Cyber origin story. One, in like 2015, a guy named Steve Cardinal who worked at MUSC with me, he had experience doing podcasting and theater and stuff like that. And he wanted to start a podcast internal to MUSC. So for those listening who don't know, MUSC has like tens of thousands of employees. It's an academic medical center. And we wanted to start an internal podcast that would focus on cybersecurity with like healthcare bends to it. And this is all part of a really nice information security awareness program where it's not like, oh, you're looking at PowerPoints once a year, right? So I did that for like 2 years with Steve, and I learned the podcasting business. I learned about, audio and running interviews and production and stuff like that. So it's a skill I picked up and I enjoyed it. But one of the things I did not enjoy was the constraints that MUSC put on us. So like there were certain things we couldn't talk about. There were certain guests we couldn't speak to or, whatever. So that was, I didn't like that level of censorship or control. Not necessarily bad. It was just policy. And Steve quit and went to work somewhere else. And I did the podcast for like another week or two. And I was like, I don't enjoy this. This isn't fun anymore. What I would like to do is my own stuff and do it in a way that I like. And I think with video, it would be really cool, right? Like, I'm a more visual person anyways. I think it'd be more fun. So I said, okay, like I'll start Simply Cyber. And actually in the, you probably can't find it online, but like in the very final episode, Steve came back and we did like a closeout podcast episode to end the show. And for what's coming up next, I actually introduced the idea that I would be launching Simply Cyber at some point. The other thing, John, and I'm sure you get this all the time, same Steve, like I get asked a lot the same questions, right? Especially like I got a PhD. A lot of people, it's very mysterious and mystique, but a lot of people have the aspiration of a PhD. So I would get asked quite often, like, what's the PhD? Because it's a PhD in cyber operations, which is even more new and nuanced. So a lot of people would be like, what's a PhD like? Should I get a PhD? How hard was it? How did you apply? I'd also get questions like, how do I break in the industry? What is GRC? Like, what is risk? Like all these questions. And I would answer people and it would take me like 15 minutes to answer the question, which is not terrible if you think like, oh, whatever, what's 15 minutes? But if you get asked the same question 30 times, that's 30 times 15 and it's the same question, which I don't mind, but I'm saying it over and over again. I am big on optimization. Time is literally my most valuable asset. So I said, you know what I would do? I should make videos answering the questions. And then what I ended up doing was, if someone asked me the question, I would send them a link to the video and I'd say, I've answered this question extensively in this video. I'll tell you what, watch the video. And if you have any questions at all afterwards, reach out to me and I will be happy to talk to you. That way I felt better because I wasn't just like, here's a link, kid, get out of here, right? But I was doing what Ray Sturby did to me before. Here's resources, do the work. And if you want, I'm here later on. And I would say, honestly, 99% of people never followed back up.
Right.
I hope it's because the video answered their question extensively. But either way, it would take me like 3 seconds to send them a link, not 15 minutes. And I just, continue to stack on that. In fact, Simply Cyber now today has like 1,200 videos. And one of my favorite things to say is I have a video for that, because like almost always I have a video for that. Even nuanced things. Like I have a video on how to go from being a rabbi to a cyber engineer. Like I have a video for that. So
I went and looked at the video that we did on Sigma, and I was like, it's got 12,000 views. Like,
Yeah.
what in the world? Like, I haven't even looked at it, but it is awesome that you have videos for practically everything. Makes sense.
So that's amazing. So just briefly, if somebody were to go to your YouTube page, Simply Cyber is helping people get into cybersecurity. Is that correct?
yeah, I think that's a fair. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to distill it down into like a quick headline, but yeah, I mean, helping people. I like to say launch or level up a cyber career, because a lot of practitioners get value from the show, from the platform as well.
Okay. Awesome. So so you kind of got into the podcast, creating your videos. You started Simply Cyber. At what point did you say, you know what? I'm going to move from the typical 9 to 5, start my own business, take this and just fly with it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that actually was years. So I started Simply Cyber in December of 2019. And excuse me, I went full time in September of 2023. So close to 4 years it took. Personally, I really love cybersecurity. I love working in it. I was like basically CISO a couple times. I was enjoying it, but essentially what happened was the demand that Simply Cyber was putting on me was getting larger and larger. And I ended up having to like either diminish what I was doing with Simply Cyber in order to meet the timelines that I had, or I was like kind of struggling to balance these things. In fact, with my last 2 jobs, before I went full time, my last 2 jobs, I had actually worked out a deal with like the CEOs of the company that like I would only work 30 hours a week, and 10 hours I would be working on Simply Cyber. One of those situations, I actually got them to give me a stipend for Simply Cyber. So I think it was like $5,000 a year, like to spend however I want with no discretion. And I bought this microphone, this camera, so I was starting to already kind of like leverage the relationships in order to start leveling up Simply Cyber, with the ultimate goal of pivoting. Now, for me personally, I'm responsible for my wife and my kids. I have a family, I have responsibilities, I have financial obligations, all these things. So for me, I couldn't be like, I'm definitely not reckless. I'm a risk professional, right? Like I'm not going to be like, YOLO, let's see if this works. So I actually, worked hard for several years, basically running 2 full-time jobs essentially, until I got to a point where I could quit my full-time job and not really, obviously I took a pay cut immediately because like I lost that salary, but my monthly expenses, my monthly income from Simply Cyber and the things associated with Simply Cyber had exceeded my monthly expenses. So I knew no matter what, I wouldn't be putting my kids out or my wife out and putting them in a tough situation. And that's when I made the decision. And it's important to note too, it's not like Simply Cyber is this like roulette machine, or not roulette. What are these machines called? The one-arm band. Yeah, like it's not a jackpot that's just printing money, but like I do speaking engagements and I do consulting, and like Simply Cyber is just like one facet of my business. So like just to be transparent with everybody, it's not like I'm just this Mr. Beast YouTuber who's like, just printing money. It's definitely not that way.
No, that's awesome. I have a master's in business administration with a focus on entrepreneurship, and it's always interesting for me to hear from people who have done it, that they've started their own business, and just getting their answer to, hey, it was at this point in my journey that I said, okay, I'm ready to take that big step, because it is a big step, right? So it's, to me, I find that very fascinating, and just to kind of hear different sides of different stories.
Well, and to put a final point on it, Steve, like I remember telling my boss when I quit, I said, listen, I got to quit. I'll make the transition as smooth as possible, but I got to quit. He's like, well, what is it? Like, you want more money? And I said, no, I don't want money. I don't need money. I need time. And this job is taking my time. I need to quit my job because I need the time that I'm spending in the job to spend into the business. And it made it like a very easy decision.
So we talked about Simply Cyber and kind of what you're doing in that space and how you are mentoring to larger groups. So can you kind of talk about how that has been and kind of that experience?
Yeah, I mean, Simply Cyber, like, I like to say that I mentor at scale, which has its trade-offs. Now I get, I probably get like 50 or 60 DMs a day of people saying very open-ended questions like, I want to break into cybersecurity, tell me what to do, or how do I do this? Or like, just, and I can't answer that volume of people, unfortunately, but I try to make it very clear, very transparent at scale that like I am doing Simply Cyber to help people every single day from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. It's an AMA session where you can ask any questions you want. I encourage people to come there and ask the questions. But just from a time management perspective, I have to do it that way. One of the nice things too is, yes, I'm mentoring at scale and answering people's questions and helping, but Simply Cyber has evolved from just me and a channel to a whole community. And the community is, again, I hate saying this because it sounds so like arrogant, but like, it has inspired other people to seek out mentoring at scale. So like other YouTube channels have like sprouted up of people who are in the community, and we all share and support each other. We all make each other aware of what others are doing within the community so other people can find out about the community, which is awesome for me. Even these like 30-minute AMAs, when I teach during the semester, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I can't do those AMAs. Two members of the community have stepped up, and one guy runs the Tuesday, one guy runs the Thursday. So it's awesome to not just mentor at scale and help people achieve their goals, but also to help inspire others to want to mentor at scale and see the power and the impact that it can have, and frankly, how to do it, which is super awesome. Plus, it's so rewarding. Every day we get 500 people-ish live in chat every single morning for the daily briefings. And people are like, just today, like 3 people were sharing that they had just gotten their first cybersecurity job. And we celebrate that as a community because it's amazing and it's fantastic. And like, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, I have to say what you and others at Simply Cyber have been able to create is amazing. I know it motivated John and I to start this podcast. So thank you for that. And it is good to hear and good to see the communities within cybersecurity, especially with Simply Cyber, just helping each other, right? And just being open to helping others, answering questions, giving advice, mentoring, whatever it may be, but just being helpful. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of just ask you, like what's next for you?
I'm going to continue. I didn't build Simply Cyber or my business with any idea or goal of exiting. So, like for me, it's just continuing to grow, build the community, be impressed by, where it goes organically. I like to tighten up. For me, it's always like improving everything, like at least 1% a day, little by little. And, basically making these things accessible. All sorts of projects kind of crop up. So just like some fun ones, like I have the distinguished opportunity to keynote Wild West Tech and Fest this fall, which is like my favorite conference. It's so good and so community driven. Like, so I'm able to I try to leverage all these things because okay, I'm keynoting a conference that has like 1,000 people who all work in the industry. Because of that, I'll be able to feature Simply Cyber and have more people learn about it. So hopefully that feeds into more people showing up, which hopefully inspires more people to contribute, which makes more people in the industry go. So it's a very, very positive cycle. But it's like InfoSec, man. Like it's work. You got to put the work in. You got to grind. There's no easy button. But you just do that. So for me personally, I've got a vulnerability management analyst class. I didn't even talk about the school in this interview, but basically I have a school full of education that I am working on. I'm a big GRC person. There's not really good GRC training. There's tons of like pen testing training and SecOps training, but like GRC people are kind of left like, hey, go look at NIST. So like I'm building a whole school that like it's everything that you would want to learn about GRC, nothing else. You won't find a pen testing course in there, but you will find, GRC analyst, Cyber 101. I'm working on a vulnerability management analyst class. So those are kind of the bigger projects and initiatives, but really the why behind them.
Do you want to talk about the TV show? Like you're going to be a host
for
a TV show.
That's another thing. I'm so terrible. Like I do so many things that I forget about them. Thanks, John, for reminding me. Yeah. So actually, I flew out to Vegas 2 weeks ago to film season 1, like a full-on TV show. It's called Late Night with Jerry, it's a late night format. I have an opening monologue. I have a band. I have guests come on. I do interviews, silly games with the guests and stuff like that. I got a desk, coffee cup, and they're in the desk chairs. So that'll be coming out in August. The studio told me that they want to premiere it at Black Hat with like a whole red carpet event type thing. So it's with them right now. I've done all the principal photography, which is what I'm involved with. I wrote all the scripts. I found all the guests. I think people are going to love it. The guests are amazing. We had like a red episode, a blue episode, purple episode. So look for that. It'll be on right now. It'll be streaming on Night TV, which is a little bit smaller of a streaming service, but it's actually being shopped with very, very, very well-known streaming services that most people have already subscribed to. So you'll be able to find it. Trust me. When it comes out, I will be telling everybody where it is.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome. Really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely a once in a lifetime thing. Like going to the South Pole and having an IMDb page. Like basically.
That's right.
That's awesome. So just really quickly, just to kind of wrap us up, what are some fun things that you're doing right now? What are you doing for fun on your free time, if you have any?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, I love running, frankly. I don't run as much as I would like to. You think, by the way, you think you'd get your own business and you'd be like, oh, I'm the boss. I make my own hours. And in reality, you're just more busy. So I love running. Basically, when I run, you can't get a hold of me. It's nice. I get to clear my mind, clear my thoughts. I'm also like doubling down because I'm doing health things for my body. Since I mostly stand at my desk for like 12 hours a day. So big fan of running, and spending time with my family, frankly. I enjoy that quite a bit too.
Listening to anything cool while you're out there running? Are you just in the zone or?
No, so normally I listen to retro synthwave music. There's a band called The Midnight that I love. But
Nice.
just recently, I'm a big fan of like multi-volume fiction stories. So just recently I actually started The Witcher. I'm on book 4. So I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm running. It's just to relax and decompress. But so I've been listening to The Witcher, but normally I'm the Midnight type guy. And it's got to be fiction. Like I don't want to listen to like nonfiction while I run because I just kind of want to chill out and be vibing. Fiction, nonfiction, I read in print. I'm a print person. I can't read a Kindle book.
Usually I would listen to something, an audiobook that's more instructional, helpful in the morning. On the way home, I'm listening to some kind of fiction, like something to decompress, fun, that I'm not having to think too hard about. So I love it too.
Yeah,
so
take me away.
Everybody needs a break sometime. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing some time. Before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts, anything you'd like to share with the listeners? Maybe talk about where they can find you?
Yeah. If you want, if you liked what you heard, you can go to simplycyber.io, which is my website, but simplycyber.io/socials. And that's basically just like one of these like landing pages that has links to everything. So I have this page. So basically, depending on where you are in your career journey, depending on why you want to talk to me, depending on whatever it is, there's something there that kind of aligns to every kind of person who's going to reach out. So simplycyber.io/socials. I'd also really encourage people to come to the morning threat briefings. They're 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern time every weekday. It's been going on for 618 episodes in a row. Like I said, there's 500 people there. It's very, very valuable. from a networking perspective, from a community perspective, from staying abreast of current things in the industry. And you can get to that quite quickly by going to simplycyber.io/streams with an S, streams. And that'll basically just dump you to my YouTube live page. And you'll see all the different streams and the dates and everything like that. And say hi in chat. If you do join us, let us know that you heard this interview on the pod, and we'll give a shout out.
Yeah, you may find me there. I'm on there occasionally. I'm usually on there at least Fridays and Mondays. So I'm trying to show up too. And I definitely get value from it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this wraps another episode of the Cybersecurity Mentors podcast. If you have any questions or on what you've heard today, please visit our Discord channel or send us a message on LinkedIn. Other than that, thank you again, Dr. Gerald Auger, for your time.
My pleasure. It was great being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Cybersecurity Mentors podcast.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you get all the episodes. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the secrets of cybersecurity mentorship.
Do you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or do you want to share your journey? Join us on Discord at Cybersecurity Mentors Podcast and follow us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, I'm John Hoyt.
And I'm Steve Higuereta.
Thank you for listening.